Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and every single new WoW expansion since Classic World of Warcraft has found a way to evolve our classes, usually through a huge revamp coming to our talents. In Dragonflight, Blizzard found a way to bring back the talent tree back into the game instead of the Mists of Pandaria variation that gave you a very few sparse options. But it allowed players to be able to create new builds and new playstyles, combined with different tier sets and other weapons and items and different trinkets in order to be able to create a variety of different builds for dungeons, raids, and PvP. Where we then continue to evolve on that system by adding the hero talents, which help better define class fantasy with some new talents that are more thematic. And it seems like the next chapter of World Soul Saga Midnight is actually going to revamp those talents even further in a major way. One of the biggest expansions of class power and class abilities that we've seen in a very long while, by giving us even more talent points to invest into our class talent trees as well as spec talent trees. An additional row of talents to better define every single hero talents that we have access to, as well as a new thing called Apex Talents, which is a brand new singular talent point that can be invested multiple times in a row, providing some massive gameplay defining benefits while further reinforcing every single aspect that makes all of these different class specs and playstyles strong in their own unique way. And for this video, I really wanted to go over everything that we know so far regarding some of the major class revamps that will be arriving for Midnight. And on this channel, I've covered classes and their evolution throughout War Within very in depth, and I'm super excited to see how our classes and all these different playstyles will continue to change and evolve with Midnight. So hopefully we'll be seeing that alpha very soon. So with that, if you guys want to see more regular content updates regarding Midnight Alpha and potentially Midnight class changes, which I'm going to cover in detail in the future, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. So as we are leveling our way to a new level of 90 for Midnight, which looks like we're ending off with 100 in the last Titan, and I wonder if they'll do a level squish afterwards, but from that point forth, we will be getting at least 3 more talent points within the class talent tree. Now, there's a couple of different ways that Blizz could go about this. Either it's going to be 3 additional talents after you've unlocked all the different gates for your talents, or those talents potentially could be gated. So it's either just going to be 3 talent points that I can invest in my evoker, like maybe pick it up Twin Guardian so I could use this in raid, or possibly pick up, I don't know, Burn Furnace so that my fire breath damage can last a little longer. Maybe pick up like Unravel or possibly Ancient Flame. Any other utility ability I really want to pick up, honestly. Maybe we just make it hover last a little longer would be nice too. Or those talent points are going to be gated. And what I mean by this is normally you meet a certain level where you have to spend enough talent points in the top row until you can unlock talents further down from your talent tree. So they may do a thing where they will give us an extra talent point to spend per row. So I'll need to spend an extra talent point in the first row, an extra talent point in the second row, and just 1 extra talent point at the very bottom row. So either it's going to be gated or potentially just 3 talent points that you can invest anywhere you want to. One, of course, would be more limiting, but you pick up more utility, while the other would give you some really impactful choices. If you are given 3 talents to spend however you want to and potentially add some of those capstone choices in a class row, some classes have just a lot of utility options. Like look at the Evoker, there's some defensives, there's some niceties for fire breath, but most of them are just little utility options that don't necessarily change my performance in raids or dungeons. While other classes still have the older design where a lot of the power is in the class talents, and some of those new options, just literally 3 extra options to add another capstone that increases your power in one way or another, can be up to like a 5% damage increase, 8%, sometimes even like up to 12% damage increases. These are huge talents, so for some classes in the current state, they would actually be getting a huge power spike, while others will be able to get some utility, but they'll feel like they'll fall behind a little because of this change. So hopefully they'll do a bit of rebalancing for class talents to remove some of those performance-based talent choices out of the class tree and fill more class talents with utilitarian options and niceties and conveniences and things like that that don't necessarily make a class stronger, but make it maybe more convenient to play within a variety of different pieces of content. Now, another aspect that's also going to be expanded on is the hero talents. Instead of giving us a new hero talent option, they're actually still going to be keeping 2 per spec, but they're going to be expanding them in a new way. You'll be able to add 3 more talents into hero talent slots. However, right now as hero talents are, you don't really get like options. You don't really get to miss out on any of the rows. You basically get to invest all of the points with a couple of choice nodes in between. So they're essentially going to be adding another row. So very similar to how we have like 1, 2, 3 rows, we'll get in the fourth row of passive and potentially even choice nodes as well, similar to what we see with the talent tree. As of right now, what these talents are and what they're going to do for you is still a bit up in the air. It could really be anything, and they could take the hero talents in a huge direction. However, if anything, I do think our current tier sets from the patch 11.2 Season 3 content, the Koresh update, I think some of those tier sets are likely going to be part of that talent tree combo. And I think in particular, patch 11.2 tier sets for classes are super unique because essentially every class has 2 tier set options, which change depending on your hero talent's choice. So as a preservation healing evoker, you actually have 2 tier sets. If you switch over to Flame Shaper, you get 1 set of bonus. When you go Chrono Warden, you get an entirely another set of bonus that are all like specialized for these hero talents in particular. So it's very possible they'll just pull the idea of these hero tier sets and they'll make them part of the hero talents in some way or another, either in full capacity with as strong as they are, or like in a reduced capacity, but adding the same gameplay components. So this is very likely what we'll be getting, unless they do some kind of crazy revamps for hero talents. But overall, I think it'll be really good to see either way. I think the idea of expanding the hero talents as they are right now is good, as they're continuing to build on them, and it's very similar to kind of like how Blizzard transitioned vanilla WoW, classic WoW, into like Burning Crusade or Wrath of Lich King. You saw an expansion of talents. They were able to add more options to make certain builds like Balance Druids and Elemental Shamans, which weren't really amazing in classic or vanilla, but became better and even further better in TBC with more talents to support that class and playstyle better, and then even more expansion on those talents in Wrath. So the more expansions we add, the more choices we add, and the more ways we can modify the hero talents through other rows, I think they could help better define some of these options to be viable. So if one is, let's say, really good at single target but lacks AoE, they can add some AoE components. Or if the opposite, one is really good in AoE but can't do any boss damage, they can add components there as well. Utilitarian aspect, defensive options, all of those things that may be feeling like they're missing with one hero talent or another that holds it back, this is something that can potentially fill the gaps on, and I think it's really good to see in general. But I also hope we do see a pretty decent revamp when it comes to hero talents as well. There's a number of options that many class specs out here have that are just way too passive and don't necessarily add too much in terms of your day-to-day gameplay. They don't actually make your class feel stronger. It's just something that happens in the background that you can't really control. Wildstalker Druids in particular is something I really don't enjoy. I feel like, at least for Feral, it just feels, it's strong, don't get me wrong, but it's just way too passive. A huge swath of rogue hero talents are also a little too passive, and some just not even viable. Like Subtlety as a Deathstalker hasn't been good since the start of this expansion in any form. Maybe a little bit for PvP, but Trickster just being so dominant, and they just haven't given that other option enough support. So something I definitely am hoping that they will really work on, and we'll get a better idea of exactly what they're doing with these hero talents come the Midnight Alpha. And lastly, we're also going to be getting 4 more talent points to invest back into our spec talent tree, which is where majority of the gameplay components are lying in. Majority of the power progression for every single class and spec is going to come from the spec talents. However, by all the means, it sounds like we're going to be getting 4 talent points to invest into the bottom capstone of the talent tree, unlike the class talents where we might be able to, allocate top row, middle row, bottom row. It looks like they're opening up the spec tree in a major way because they're adding a new thing for every single class called Apex Talents. So Apex Talents are going to be this huge talent point node that you can invest up to 4 talent points into, but the choice of how you spend those points is going to be really up to you. However, you are going to be heavily encouraged with Apex Talents, as they'll provide you, like the first rank is going to provide you a huge gameplay defining component. The next 2 ranks is generally going to be some sort of a strong passive increase, and the final rank is yet another impactful gameplay option, but the choice apparently is going to be up to you. Like if let's say your class gets an Apex talent, but you're just not really feeling it, maybe it's not great for your build. Most of them are probably going to be very strong though, and you're going to be incentivized to put points into it, but maybe you don't want to heavily invest into it. So you'll be able to spend those 4 points however you like. If you want to pick up more capstone choices in your spec tree to fully finalize your build, or potentially pick up some of the options in the middle and the top tier that maybe you missed, that maybe will actually be huge components in terms of adding you additional mechanics or unique synergies for your class, you'll be able to spend them however you want to. And I think that choice is really good. But they are looking to find ways to make those Apex talents a huge draw for your class and encourage players to want to invest into them, so they'll likely end up tuning in to be very strong no matter what class you are. What's cool about them is every single one of those Apex talents is meant to be a unique power spike for every single class, uniquely designed around how that class plays, that should potentially be able to create some synergies with the hero talents and other components. So they are most likely going to be very strong and very well tuned to make sure that you are getting the huge power spike, even if you just invest 1 point into it. To demonstrate how impactful some of these Apex talents could be, I am going to go over really quickly how Preservation Evoker works in raid healing and try to simplify it as much as possible, and then show you how that Apex talent would be massive gain for this playstyle specifically. Probably not the easiest class to explain, as Preservation Flameshaper is pretty complex out of all the healers out there, in my opinion, after playing it for a while, but there are some components that I am going to try to simplify just to show you how strong this Merithrith's ability that they're getting is going to be. So the way that Evoker works, and I'm just going to try to explain it in the simplest ways possible, is for the most part what you do in raid right now is you use the ability of Echo, which allows you to put this buff in the target where your next healing ability will echo to whoever has the echo on. So when you spread a couple of echoes to multiple targets and you hit one with ability like Reversion, a very strong healing over time effect, then you're able to put this hot on multiple targets, spreading it to multiple players. Reversion is also really strong as a heal, not just for his healing over time component, but if, let's say, a target takes a huge hit from a raid mechanic, you can instantly reverse some of the damage with your bronze magic in the last 5 seconds. So you basically will spend a lot of your time putting Echo and then Echo on another target, and as soon as someone's taking a big hit, you'll just hit them with a quick reversion, reverse a lot of that damage, with these train damage taking like millions and millions of physical damage, but yeah, you could really reverse a lot of damage right now. These dummies are just a little bit whack right now. And that's majority of the mechanic. And what are the reasons you do that? There's a couple of different components. One, you get temporal compression, so your next empowerment ability is going to be huge, which will be using into a Dream Breath ability. But also, you generate stacks of Essence Burst. And in a way, that's almost like loading up ammo for your Evoker as you're trying to reload the big mortar. Now, you're going to need all that ammunition, because when you do use the ability of Dream Breath, then you're going to be able to get yourself a bunch of healing, following up with an engulf. And now whenever you consume abilities that consume Essence Burst, you now send out these mortars of healing to nearby allies. And as you use the ability of Reversion, you have a chance to basically reload that mortar, giving you even more procs that you could use inside of this small window. And you basically get to do that every 30 seconds or so. So safe to say Reversion is a pretty pivotal ability when it comes to Flameshaper Preservation. It is huge. It offers passive healing, it offers damage reversion, and it offers you a bunch of procs that allow you to put up even more healing. So their Apex talent, since Reversion is such a core ability, is going to play around this dot of Reversion, with the Apex literally transforming Reversion, a chance to transform it into an AoE heal instead of a single target heal. A heal you could spread with the ability of Echo, which is very strong. The passive element is going to buff Reversion's healing mechanic, that damage reversion component, so it's going to make it even better at reversing damage, and now it can hit multiple targets. It becomes really strong in a raid setting or even in a dungeon setting. And the capstone interacts with the Dream Breath ability, which is part of the Flameshaper, which you get to use every 30 seconds, guaranteeing you guaranteed procs of Merithrith's blessing. So it just becomes a basic rotational skill that you can proc anytime you need it. And hopefully this makes some sense for any of you that don't normally play Preservation, but yeah, this Apex talent seems huge. It seems super easy to integrate as part of your rotation, and it just amplifies a single target damage over time or healing over time effect to now do AoE healing, which would be amazing in raids, but also in dungeons as well. It seems like a huge power spike all across the board. However, Blizzard also did give us another example, specifically for the Devourer Demon Hunter. However, as of right now, Devourer Demon Hunter does not have a playstyle that we know of. We know a number of abilities that they're going to be using, all void themed, but we don't necessarily know how it's going to play. However, we do know this. The ability of Collapsing Star will be a pivotal ability to that class specifically, and there will be something that they'll gain access to inside of Void Metamorphosis, and there will be plenty of talents and mechanics to encourage you to use Collapsing Star as often as possible. So their Apex talent is going to empower Collapsing Star, with the first trait being one that causes it to always critically strike, which is going to be a huge guaranteed damage spike. The passive components are going to be a little bit more simple, as they'll increase your base damage and will give Collapsing Star critical damage scaling. So the more critical strike you have as a stat, it just simply increases the effectiveness of Collapsing Star, very similar to Destruction Warlocks if you're familiar with that spec, and how crit interacts with the ability of Chaos Bolt, literally ripping the mechanic from them and giving it to Devour Demon Hunters, which I think is yet another example of Blizzard taking a unique Warlock mechanic and giving it to Demon Hunter yet again. It was initially Metamorphosis from Demonology, but now they're literally giving Chaos Bolt crit scaling to Devourer. Either way, the final trait is going to be one where whenever you enter Void Meta, it allows you an immediate use of Collapsing Star. As a pivotal ability, this means you'll have that immediate damage with a bunch of resources as soon as you enter your huge burst window. Safe to say that these Apex talents are looking pretty strong. For Preservation, this seems like a huge power spike, and for Devour Demon Hunter, I'm assuming if Collapsing Star is going to be as pivotal as I imagine it to be, it's probably going to be a huge portion of their gameplay as well. So they are introducing some very powerful talent choices, and it just makes you wonder, like, what kind of effects are different class picks gonna get? Like, what is an Armors Warrior gonna get versus a Fury Warrior? What type of Apex talents are Rogues getting? Hunters, Marksmanship, Beast Mastery, Survival, Mages, Shadow Priest, Desert Warlock, and what about healers and so many different healing components as well? And I wonder what type of defensive components they could potentially give tanks also. However, I also do like the fact that these Apex talents is something you're going to be encouraged into picking up, but not mandatory. They're going to be a choice of either putting points into the Apex talents versus other capstone options instead. And I think that could be pretty interesting too, because a lot of the capstone choices for most classes, not all, but most, are actually huge gameplay implementations, and some of the synergies that classes could make right now, if they just had like 4 extra points to put into, could be massive. But the Apex talents are going to be competing against those choices as well. So it'll be a choice of you being able to grab some powerful familiar choices that are very strong, that you are very well aware of, unless they do like huge revamps, which likely that's happening as well, or the Apex talents to be competing against those choices as well. And the fact that you can invest partially or fully into the Apex talent, I think is going to be interesting as well. Another thing I wanted to note off is the fact that our classes and their talents are likely going to go through vast changes. Just taking a look at the same window that we had for some of the Apex talents, you could actually see what the Unholy talent tree looks like, and that thing looks wild. They moved, it looks like Army, to the right hand side of the tree instead of being a center point talent, and there's a bunch of new icons all over the place, which looks like some kind of like a Lich icon towards the bottom capstone choice, which maybe Unholy Deathlights are going to be summoning other undeads instead. It's very interesting to see what they're going to be potentially doing with some of the choices that we have, and it looks like big revamps are on the horizon, which gets me super excited, as they are adding more talents without necessarily expanding the talent tree, making it, flow deeper for further down. They're just giving them more choices in between, but it makes me wonder, and honestly gets me excited about some of those different components that they'll shift around within trees themselves. So between the Apex talents, additional choices within the hero talents, more potentially utilitarian options in the class talents, and a full revamp of the spec tree, we might be looking at what possibly could be one of the biggest class revamps going forward, and one of the biggest power gains from Midnight in general. Honestly, this overall, just thinking about some of the different talent revamps that we'll be getting, gets me super excited about what our classes may play like in Midnight. Cannot wait to see what the talent builds are looking like. Definitely have high hopes, but also I'm hoping for some streamlining in the future, as I do think some of the classes that we have right now, some of them are just made complex for the sake of complexity, but don't necessarily have a satisfying playstyle or a feel. So hopefully they'll make some more changes in order to make more class specs and hero talent options feel more satisfying to run through dungeons, raids, and PvP content as well. But with that being said, as always, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give it a like. I would very very much appreciated. Also, be sure to join our Discord community, especially if you want to keep up with all of the future upcoming content from 11.2.5 with Legion Remix, Turbo Boost, as well as potentially Midnight Alpha, hopefully right around the corner. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.